Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a late night insight video on a Xerjoff that I'm only getting to smell and talk about with you guys thanks to the generosity of one of you, one of my beautiful subscribers. That person is Joanna Huttonstone. And Joanna Huttonstone sent me sort of a preview of some of her work. She's kind of a self-taught perfumer, I believe. And she sent me a beautiful little sample set of her work. And so I will maybe one day talk about some of the things that she sent me, if she's okay with me talking about some of them on the channel. I don't know if her fragrances are for sale yet, or if it's something that she is kind of still working on. But beautiful presentations. She made this, or she sent me this maybe a month or two ago, and so I've had it in my possession for a couple months. And inside of this little beautiful set is a sample that she sent me of a Xerjoff that I'm going to put this back over here so I don't lose it or drop it, that I am only getting to know thanks to her generosity. And this is called Al-Khatt. And this is from what they call the Oud Stars collection. Thank you for sharing this. It's been a pleasure getting to know this. So most people who know me probably think that this review is going to be full of cursing, and which I'm trying to cut back on, but full of me being very disappointed in Xerjoff. And there is maybe a little bit of that, but less so than I originally thought going in. So I will tell you that I've had this on my skin now for, 2 to 3 hours. And I've got to experience this once before because I have worn this to bed once. You can see I've put a pretty decent sized dent in the decant that she gave me. So let's talk a little bit about Al-Khatt. But before we do that, let's stay with the ritualistic scent of the day, as is customary on Channel Ram. So today, I wore for the very first time my brand new, well, vintage, but new to me, Roja, which needs to be cleaned. Apologies. The fingerprint police will not be happy. And so this is Roja's Sultanate of Oman in the vintage rainbow cap. The new bottles have a little different presentation, and I think maybe even the smell might be a little bit different. I'm not talking anything crazy, but I think it would be cool for me to do a comparison video between the newer version, which comes with a black, comes with sort of a black plate with the two spires that Oman is sort of famous for, and Roja's more regular, traditional black cap that you'll see on some of the Pure Parfum. So it's a little different presentation. Some people think there's been a reformulation. I sense some slight differences to my nose. No reason to go out and spend like $1,000 on this or anything like that. The price at retail is outrageous enough, but I think it would be, those are the type of videos I like to do for FragCom, something that no one else is doing. And I think that'll be a video that is one of those unique videos. And since I have the juice, I've got a 7.5 ml Discovery Atomizer of the new juice of Sultanate of Oman. I think that would be kind of a cool video to do for you guys. If you've never smelled Sultanate of Oman, it is Roja's take on a incense fragrance, and it is damn good. I've really enjoyed wearing it. It came out in 2016. It sort of has this, it basically has this almost like incense with this burning papyrus paper accord. And there is smoke in here because it's an incense fragrance, but it's not. Some incense fragrances are only lemony. This captures a lot of the qualities of incense that I really like. And then to top it off, it's got that Roja sort of posh DNA. There's things like iris and elemi and amyris in here, and guardian balsams and saffron. And so there's these other factors that, there's a little bit of carrot seed, which carrot seed and iris sort of kind of play in the same sandbox. But when you mix it with that dark papyrus, you have what comes to my nose anyways as one of my favorite incense fragrances of all time. I love this stuff. I wore it to work today on it's April 20th. And so it's been in the 70s and let's say high of the high 70s. And this worked beautifully. I had no problems wearing this in the high heat. Well, not high heat, but warmer-ish weather. There's some slight fruity elements to this as well. I think there's some raspberry and May rose and stuff like that. But the fragrance is just a pleasure to wear. So the only bad thing I will say about these vintage bottles is the sprayer on this is absolutely horrendous, and it eats up juice. So the newer sprayers that he used, I think, are much better. I think he upgraded the sprayers eventually. These early sprayers were horrendous. I am not a fan. Not a fan. Okay, so let's get into the Xerjoff Al-Khatt. And so this fragrance is, I'll read you a little blurb. So this is from the Xerjoff website. It says, discover Al-Khatt, a sensual invitation to a far-off land. Crafted by Xerjoff's master perfumers using traditional pure oud distillation. Al-Khatt takes its name from the ancient travels of Ibn Battuta manuscript. Opening with fresh Italian bergamot and jasmine sambac, the scent has a heart of cashmere accords for a truly seductive take on traditional Arab perfume making. A warm, sweet base of vanilla, Laotian Buaya, Bangladesh oud, and Assam oud makes for a truly intoxicating blend. Okay, so there you go. The most prosperous and precious ingredients in the world, oud. Well, all right. When you first spray Al-Khatt, what you get is you get a fragrance that, to my nose, opens up slightly medicinal. So you basically get this medicinal take on oud that sort of gives you elements of being slightly furry. So you get a little bit of fur, almost like this, musky cat fur, if you will. This animal-like furriness. And also this very synthetic flower accord. And you guys know my, if you watch the channel, you know a lot of times when I first like to sniff these samples, or sometimes even if I just come across a fragrance I'm smelling for the very first time, I like to smell it blind without looking at the notes, because I like to just let my brain process what I smell without being influenced by the note listing. And my notes when I smelled this were that it smells like a mixture in the beginning of this synthetic, slightly jammy, but very, there is a jammy facet to it, but the rose almost sort of has this, this sort of, sometimes synthetic rose materials, when they're used, come across as having this very cosmetic-y, synthetic rose-like smell, very generic rose-like smell. And in the first 5 minutes of this scent, especially, you are hit with that type of rose, this sort of mixture of what I thought was rose and osmanthus. And the rose and osmanthus comes across as being mixed with something that smells slightly pissy. And that slightly pissiness is probably this sort of oud, this type of oud that they're using that most likely, to my brain and what I've smelled previously, belongs in a Chemi bottle. So Chemi is a brand that Xerjoff is actually now implementing into their own line. So one day if you go to Parfumo, something like 16 new Xerjoffs popped up at once, and everyone went, oh my God, what is going on? Well, they were implementing that Chemi line into the Xerjoff line. They did away with the Chemi name, and they're all becoming part of Xerjoff's new collection, whatever they're calling it. And I've smelled some of those Chemis before. They showed up in some of my blind sniffing videos. You can watch those on my, if you go to my playlist, there's a blind sniffing playlist that I dedicated just to that particular set of videos. And there was a Chemi that showed up in there. I think maybe in a couple of them there was a Chemi that showed up. There might have been a couple Chemis that popped up in those videos. But the Chemi oud that I've smelled has a very distinct profile to it. It's nothing like any of the ouds that I've smelled from other brands. And when you think about the big names in, let's say, artisanal oud like Arise La Dorée and Ensar and, Rising Phoenix and Bortnikov and those type of brands, Agar Aura, you would expect that, if they're using these types of rare and precious oud, as Xerjoff says, you would expect to smell those types of rare and precious ouds from the rare and precious oud people. Never smelled ouds that smell like this before. And what I'm thinking is happening is that there's some sort of blend that Chemi and Xerjoff came up with to create this oud accord. And I'll give you my guess here in a little bit, but there's this very let's just say, pissy smelling oud that you get in the first 5 minutes, mixing with that slightly jammy. Think of it like being layered, like a thick synthetic cosmetic rose with osmanthus. And after about 5 minutes, that synthetic, chewy, whatever you want to call it, rose floral accord starts to give way. And what starts to kind of take its place is this white floral accord, which is basically jasmine sambac, is what they say, which is the most sought after jasmine in the world. And who knows how much true jasmine sambac they're using. I've been very blessed to get to experience what real jasmine sambac smells like, thanks to some of these from Russian Atom. And, the jasmine sambac here, it's not terrible. It's not the worst jasmine sambac interpretation that I've smelled, but this white floral accord starts to kind of come up, and once 5 or 10 minutes pass, what makes this perfume interesting is this kind of extremely this dichotomy between two main notes, which is that white floral jasmine accord, and ends up being a main component of this release, and this oud. And so you get this indolic jasmine with this pissy oud accord that they created that belongs in the Chemi line of fragrances, is my guess, that this was a fragrance that easily could have went into one of those Chemi bottles. And that chewy floral sort of osmanthus rose opening for the first 5 minutes. And it smells like there is some sort of fruity note to my nose as well, especially in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the fragrance. I kept getting this hint of like this fruity vibe, if you will. And if my nose is correct and there is an osmanthus note, it makes sense that there would be this fruity accord, because osmanthus is a type of floral that gives off this sort of suede-like leathery peach, almost like a nectarine feel. When you ever felt the outside of a peach or a nectarine, and it has those little fine hairs around the outer skin of the nectarine? That's sort of the vibe, the feeling of osmanthus. It's a little bit fruity from that nectarine peach-like accord, but it also has this, this animalic facet to it as well. This sort of leathery animalic facet to it as well. And so my guess is that there is a little bit of osmanthus in this accord, in this perfume that they're not listing. And to anyone who smelled Xerjoff's entire line, there will be no surprise about what I say next. But Xerjoff used way too much vanilla. Way too much vanilla. Almost like, they were trying to make a cake. I mean, just a amped up sweet cake vanilla vibe starts to come forth. And that is my least favorite part of this fragrance. And, that sort of extremely amped up sweet vanillic DNA is almost like a Xerjoff DNA, actually. If you've smelled Xerjoff fragrances, you will know they do this sweetness over and over and over, which I hate. I despise sweetness in my fragrances. I've grown to despise them as my nose has matured, you could say. I find them to be extremely juvenile to my nose, and the kind of stuff that I want to wear as someone in their late 30s is not these type of fragrances. But if you're younger, and or if you really do like that sweetness accord, there are older people that just like to have sweetness in their fragrances. Xerjoff is a brand that you probably absolutely love. For me, that sweetness kind of really puts me off. And here, they're just doing what they always do with that sweet note. It is really amped up. And what the contrast here, which you end up getting, is pissy oud. That when you think about the pissy oud DNA that I'm talking about from the Chemi line, what I think they've done is I think they've taken civet, which I have right here, synthetic civet. You won't be able to see, I don't think, because the writing has kind of come off a little bit. But Russian Atom sent me some synthetic civet, and he sent me some real civet tincture, so I can kind of compare and contrast the two. And honestly, I like them both. I like them both. Synthetic civet is a synthetic note that I can stand. And but it has a very specific smell. That synthetic civet note really stands out to my nose when it's overused, or when a brand uses too much of that synthetic civet note. Here, that's exactly what they've done. They have built this oud accord around these ouds, these 3 or 4 ouds that they claim. Parfumo actually shows 3 types of oud: Laotian oud, Bangladeshian oud, and Assam oud. And it's blended with this civet, synthetic civet, okay? And the synthetic civet really jumps out. You can smell it. And like I said, I really don't mind it. I have experience with it. And if you've smelled some of Chemi's fragrances, you will get a great idea of what that oud note is created like. You can tell they have experience sort of creating this type of oud accord DNA. It's in that line, if that makes sense. And so now what ends up happening, as the perfume continues to dry, what you're going to end up getting about 30 minutes in, and you'll notice it a little bit before, but you'll really notice it from the 30-minute on mark, is you're going to get this cashmeran note. And this cashmeran, they have a huge dollop of cashmeran in here. And if you want to hear my thoughts on one of my favorite cashmeran fragrances of all time, go watch my review of Frederic Mall's Dante Bras. That fragrance uses a fantastic cashmeran note, and Maurice Roussel brilliantly made that fragrance. There is a reason that cashmeran is named cashmeran, because it literally is supposed to have this cashmere on skin feeling. And it has some resinous and warm and sort of powdery aspects to it. But it can also have this sort of woody, resinous-like character to it. And sometimes it can feel very dry and scratchy. Imagine a sort of cashmere, imagine a cashmere sweater against your skin in the winter, your dry skin in the winter, and how it kind of can scratch it sometimes if you don't wear an undershirt, right? That's sort of the dry feeling that cashmere can give in a fragrance. And here, it gives a little bit of that, but it gives a beautiful warmth to the fragrance. There's this powdery warmth that mixes with that white floral jasmine sambac. I forgot to mention there's a slight hit of Italian bergamot in the opening, but really the first thing you're going to notice is what I mentioned earlier. But there is technically a little bit of Italian bergamot in the opening. And so while I do think this fragrance, the vibe that I get from this fragrance, what I kept coming back to is almost like this dirty girl vibe. And what I mean by that is this fragrance would smell amazing on a girl who likes to go out and party, a party girl. I think about, a girl at the bar, and it's 2 a.m., and everyone is around her kind of passing out drunk, and she's still ready to keep drinking, and partying. She doesn't want the party to end. There's a little bit of this this girl at the bar vibe, let's say, at late night at the bar, okay? And I have to admit that the cashmeran with the oud and that synthetic floral, which transitions more to the white florals as time goes on, definitely could work on the right person. This is not a fragrance for me. This is not my taste at all. But I despise the way Xerjoff does the sweetness, like I said, and that's why I only own one full bottle of Xerjoff, and that's that Xerjoff Homme. But there is something about this fragrance, I have to admit. There is something about this fragrance that feels radiant and warm. There's this, like I said earlier, the cashmeran, I think, adds this radiant warmth to the fragrance, almost enveloping. And also, there is a little bit of this stale tobacco vibe. Not much, but just a little bit of this stale tobacco vibe. And that stale tobacco vibe goes with the party girl at the bar vibe to me, because possibly Xerjoff is, whenever they do that super sweet vanilla thing, maybe like almost as a second nature without thinking, maybe they add a little bit of tonka or something like that is my guess. That the tonka may give off this dry, stale tobacco feeling, and a little bit of this tobacco vibe. If you've ever been to a bar where they used to allow people to smoke in there, and of course they don't anymore anywhere, but hardly anywhere. But let's say you go to an older bar that's been around for a long time, and they used to smoke for decades and decades in there, and even though no one has smoked for decades in that bar, there's still that smell of sort of stale smoke, right? That stale cigarette smoke. There's a little bit of that in here to my nose. And I do think that of all the Oud Stars collection that I've smelled, that this is one of the more traditionally feminine. Traditionally feminine. I don't believe in masculine and feminine fragrances because it's just a smell, right? But the jasmine makes it so. It makes it that way to my nose. It makes it extremely feminine leaning traditionally, but the jasmine here does come across as indolic. I will say that. So what's interesting, and I was actually watching a video today on Jasmine Sambach, and they were talking a little bit about the indoles in jasmine and how our nose perceives them. And they were saying that you get indoles, for example, in feces. It's one of the it's one of the aspects of feces that you actually will get indoles in feces, but it's so much that we perceive it as being stinky, as being a bad smell, right? When the indoles are brought down to a proper level, like in certain jasmines, for example, we can actually have this sort of narcotic allure to them. And the jasmine in here has a little bit of that to my nose. I know someone may have just fell out of their chair since I just praised Xerjoff, but this indolic jasmine top note that really stays around for a long time, and this oud, this pissy, civetty, chemi-like oud in the base. You kind of get the dirty girl vibe in the top and the dirty girl vibe in the bottom, all the way through. There is this animalic aspect, which any way you turn. And the cashmeran in the heart just kind of works as giving it a hug. When a bunch of drunk girls get together and one girl drinks too much, you know how the other girls always kind of come together and hold her hair back and give her a hug and are there for her, whereas when a bunch of guys get drunk, one guy just pretty much makes fun of the other one, or slaps him around a little bit, or the girl's reaction to a friend in her group being drunk is completely different to the guy's reaction to a friend in his group being too drunk, right? And that cashmeran just gives it like this hug, like the warmth of a feminine hug. And there is this allure to the fragrance. I mean, again, I wouldn't wear it. It's not for me, but I was absolutely expecting worse, to be honest with you. I was expecting to despise this fragrance. I was ready to despise it. And the more that I've got to know Xerjoff, I actually have multiple blind sniffs on my, well, that's not right. I have some live streams that are dedicated to Xerjoffs where I smelled them for the very first time live on the channel. And you'll notice that many of the non-Oud Star Xerjoffs I really disliked. I did not like many of the Oud Star. I did not like many of the Xerjoffs which were not the Oud Star line, with the exception of a few. There were a few that, like, for example, Richwood. I would totally add a vintage bottle of Richwood to the collection if I found it for a fair price. But most of the regular Xerjoff line I found almost repellent. I did not like the way that they mixed the ingredients. I didn't think they were blended very well. I thought they were way too sweet. Just the list goes on and on and on. But the Oud Stars line, for the most part, was a little bit of a surprise. There were a few in there that I actually really liked. And it's just when you take price into account. See, the problem that this line has is that this perfume right now for 50 mils is 275 euros, which you might say, well, in the grand scheme of things, this on Roja's website is 500 pounds or whatever it is, 390 pounds or 400 pounds, which works out to like $500 or something for 50 mils. So price-wise, it's pretty comparable to stuff like this. But when you start factoring in that you could find some of the Bortnikovs and the Russian Atom releases and those type of releases for very similar pricing to what Xerjoff is asking, it makes it extremely hard to go back. Once you've smelled some of the real ouds from Arij Ladore, Ensar, Bortnikov, Rising Phoenix, Agar Or, all that stuff, it's very hard to go back to the, niche releases. So the artisanal ouds and the niche ouds smell completely different to my nose. And it's just so hard to go back. It's so hard to justify spending the money on something like Al-Khatt to my nose. But I do give it a thumbs up. I give this a thumbs up for effort. As far as Xerjoff goes, like I said, I was expecting way worse. And this sort of opening, which really thought I was going to go down this rose oud, blend, and then making that hard turn into that white floral oud blend, with that cashmeran. I think it's the exact same thing. Actually, I think I might even have some. I believe that this is cashmere musk. I think that this is cashmere musk right here. So I have some experience with the ingredient itself. And it's a synthetic that they ended up using pretty well. So the Oud Stars line, as far as Xerjoff goes, is probably the stronger part of their offerings. Although value for money is still pretty low, I don't hate this. So, I mean, that's as much of a compliment as Xerjoff is going to get from me, I think, because I don't hate this. And I think that for a night out on the town, this would smell amazing. This would smell absolutely amazing for a night out on the town. New Year's Eve, something like that. Perfect fragrance for New Year's Eve, that kind of thing. It's a jovial fragrance with a little bit of a wink to it. It's that kind of it's a jovial fragrance that can be playful, but there's some dirtiness to it as well. So interesting release from 2012, and thank you again to Joanna Huttonstone for sending this in her little starter kit. I'm gonna ask her if it's okay if I talk about some of her fragrances one day, if she's okay with that, or if she just wanted to kind of keep those to myself. But yes, thanks again for sending this, and thank you to anyone who has sent me samples. As you can see, I am inundated with samples. I have a lot of samples that I want to talk about on the channel. It's just a matter of getting to it. It's just a matter of the time. So if you've tried Al-Khatt by Xerjoff, do let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you like Xerjoff's Oud Stars collection. And let me know what you think about my whole value proposition between the artisanal oud market and, of course, the niche oud market. So yes, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do leave a comment. I try to write back every single person that leaves me a comment. Although YouTube did let me know about some comments just the other day that Rich Mitch, for example, and a couple of people left me from like 6 or 7 months ago. So as long as YouTube tells me about it, I will respond. I'll respond as quickly as I can. I try to get back to every single person, and because there's so much knowledge between the subscribers that we have, and I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I learn more from you guys than you do from me. It's an honor and a privilege for me to get to do this and have you guys watch and leave comments and have fragrance conversations in the chat. It's good stuff. So it's my pleasure doing these. Thank you everyone for watching. Cheers, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.